Hi everyone, I'm Patel. I work at Imperial College London in the Electrochemical Science and Engineering group led by Greg Offer. Today I'm going to tell you a bit about the Liionslayer project, which I've been working on for a year and a half now. This project is led by Sam Cooper from Imperial College London and Emma Kendrick from University of Birmingham. The Liionslayer project is a multi-institutional project and it involves researchers from 5 different universities, namely University of Birmingham, University of Warwick, Lancaster University and University of Oxford. The project involves the study of single-sided, single-layer lithium-ion pouch cells, the design of which have been guided by the team with AMTE in order to manufacture the right cells for this project. Now, normally pouch cells are multi-layered cells of double-sided electrodes. The benefit of single-sided, single-layer cells is that we can decouple the effect of thermal gradients on the cell performance and be able to study the real kinetics and the real effect of external variables without the influence of thermal inhomogeneities that develop inside the layers during charge and discharge. There are several parts to the project. The first part focuses on investigating experimental design, looking at the different variables required for parameterization, and studying the performance of these cells under various physical conditions, with the different institutes focusing on different areas. The second part uses what has been learned from the first to optimize the prototype single-layer cell design, the experimental protocols, and build a metadata bank which contains all the information on the cells from the physical data of the raw anode and cathode components to the first formation step. The final goal of the project is to build a large, statistically significant database which contains all the information obtained from the investigation and development phases. This data feeds into models for parameterization and validation, and the experimental protocols that have been developed would be available as standard test protocols for the wider research community. There are several key questions Liionslayer has been built around and aims to address. Can we control variables such as pressure, thermal, and electrical boundary conditions at the single-layer cell level? How important are inhomogeneities to performance and degradation? Can we provide enough information for material validation in a cell model? And can we predict performance outside of normal control parameters? In order to answer these questions and meet the project aims, we first started looking at the design aspect. This includes the experimental setup of the cells and validating it, designing test protocols and then improving them. Finally, using these two to validate the cell quality and work through the optimization of the cell fabrication with AMTE. The next step involves characterization, where the cell-to-cell variability is analyzed, batch testing is carried out, and a range of different capacity single-layer cells are fabricated and tested. Then we have a performance testing part. This varies for the different institutes based on their strengths. At Imperial, we're looking at the effects of temperature on performance and aging, and carrying out these tests on the different capacity cells. Finally, all that information obtained goes into the database, and other MSM projects such as PyBAM and Dandelion can benefit from the information for parameterization and model validation. All this contributes to the data-driven early prediction of cell life goals. And of course, all the experimental protocols that have been developed feeds into the design of experiments project. At Imperial, we started by working on the rig design and developed a simple approach to securely mounting a single pouch cell between 2 plates for constant pressure with a thermal interface material placed directly on both sides of the cell to maintain uniform and controlled thermal distribution These rigs have been designed to be stackable, and the benefit of the design is that it involves the use of low-cost materials, is easy and quick to assemble, as well as space efficient. Tests were carried out to validate the cell design. Pressure studies were carried out by Alana Zulk at Lancaster University using pressure color films. Finite element analysis was used to model the resulting pressure distribution. This produced maps from which we were able to confirm a relatively uniform distribution of 0.3 megapascal. Thermal gradient monitoring inside the rigs was also carried out by placing 6 thermocouples across the cell and monitoring the temperature before and during testing. The variation of temperature distribution was found to be 0.81 degrees during fast charging compared to when idle. Having validated the rig designs, electrochemical testing of prototype cells were carried out to investigate the cell-to-cell variability. A stack of 5 cells were tested at 25 degrees Celsius. Here we have the discharge capacity of cells that underwent a C/3 CCCV charge-discharge, where each cell was cycled 5 times. Using the average capacity on discharge, the cell-to-cell variation was calculated. These cells were repeated at variable charge-discharge rates. The variation in discharge capacity was found to be 1.7 to 2.49 milliamp hour. That's less than a 1% distribution and validated the reproducibility of the cell fabrication. Capacity and temperature tests were then carried out. Each batch of testing involves 15 cells in 3 sets of 5 stacked rigs, each undergoing variable charge-discharge tests at 3 different temperatures. Each set of cells starts at different temperature and undergoes randomized C rates in order to remove any coupling effects between temperature and performance. Here is an example of data produced from such randomized testing, which allows us to compare the capacity at different temperatures and observe any coupling effects. Development of cell fabrication was ongoing during the early stages of testing. Here are a couple of examples of changes made as a consequence of testing and observations made throughout the project so far. One is the positioning of the label on the cells. This added pressure to the thermal interface material and therefore has now been moved. The other problem that was identified is sealing around edges and tabs. These were found to leak over time. The process of sealing has now been optimized and we don't see this leaking problem anymore. Other changes that were carried out to the cell fabrication include the design and placement of the tape inside the cell to secure the end of the separator and the electrodes, as well as the dimension and positioning of the contact tabs. To summarize, the Liionslayer team have been working with AMTE to develop single-layer lithium-ion pouch cells from which a range of different levels of testing can be carried out. And this is in order to build a database that can be used by modelers for data-driven early prediction of life. Different institutional partners are contributing towards this database using their unique expertise. At Imperial, we have so far completed the design and characterization stages. Ongoing tests are looking at different capacity cells and the effects of temperature. Following that, long-term degradation testing of different capacity cells at different temperatures will begin. This brings me to the end of my presentation today. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, here are the details of how you can submit them to the upcoming Q&A panel session.